Today is the 21st of June, and I didn't record on the 18th because a lot of stuff's been happening, and one of those things was my first electrolysis appointment, so that was yesterday, and I wanted to go ahead and wait until I had had that appointment before I recorded so that I could include it. Um, the Electrolysis has begun on my arm. I don't know if it can really be seen. The little tiny spot is kind of, it's right here. It- um, can you see that? I don't know. So this essentially little area right here is the first spot. Yesterday it was red and it had like, a pretty solid redness to it. It wasn't quite as bright as like a bad sunburn, but it definitely did look a little sunburned. That first electrolysis session, I'm gonna be going every week now. Um, it was a little nerve-wracking but exciting at the same time to go to it. When I met the electrolysis people, they were like super nice and everything and made it sound like I would be able to start electrolysis like right away. But unfortunately, there was a death in someone's family, and so there was a big delay on me being able to start. So that really sucked. It basically was a month until I could start electrolysis, which is hard for me, but I tried to get, especially once I found out the reason why they were waiting to get me started. Obviously you got to be, understanding about that because that's not a controllable thing. And if it happened to you, you would need time off work too. So, like, it's totally understandable. It's just every delay, I feel it like really hard on anything to do with my transition on surgeries and stuff. So it's been super anxiety ridden, despite being something that, is really important, positive, and stuff. So I finally have started yesterday, first one. So I'm going to be going on Tuesdays to get my electrolysis. And the estimate is like um, 5 months or so for my arm to get done. Um, I like the people who are doing it. They had me watching anime while they were doing the electrolysis, so that was nice. They have a support dog, support cat, and a support snake there. So animals for people to pet if they need to while they're getting their electrolysis. But because mine's on the arm, it's not as big of a deal as it were. When you have hair that grows on your body, when it grows on your face or it grows in your genital areas, there's a lot more hormones going to it and it takes a lot more work. But on the arm, it's pretty straightforward comparatively. Also, there was no numbing cream or anything like that put on, which they usually do, but because it was my arm, they said that wasn't necessary. Um, when she went to do it, there was like a light that she held really close to my arm, and then she put something in my right hand that was wrapped in like a baby wipe for me to hold on to that I could use if needed, but I never needed it. I think it was like some sort of thing for her to stop what she was doing, like a button thing that would stop her machine, so that she wouldn't keep going. But I never used it or felt a reason to. I think the baby wipe was literally just because of COVID protocols. I don't think it was anything else. But on the left arm is where the electrolysis was happening, and I was on this like it almost felt like a barber's chair, but it had like this raised arm thing for my arm to be on. Um, and then the light was really close down on it, and then she had this needle thing that would have little surges of electricity that would go into it, and she would stab it into each hair follicle, and it stings. It does sting, but it wasn't like so painful that like, you know, you have a knee jerk reaction or you pull away or even wince. It's like, oh, that's uncomfortable, you know, kind of a feeling. But it's, I've heard people say before it's like being snapped with a rubber band. I didn't get that sensation. Maybe that's more on like, again, genitals or on face, but for me it was like a very directed needle prick. Like a very, I've never been stung by a bee in my entire life, but I would imagine it feels like that. And maybe bees are worse because I've seen people cry over bee stings. But I'm just saying it felt like a very direct, pinpointed sting, and then that sting would last for all of like 2.5 seconds, and then it would come out, and the little hair follicle would fall off. And so I have this little patch here of no hair. Before I went, because my hairy arms are so hairy, I had to shave down my arms some because my hairy arms are too long of hairs. But you don't want it to be shaved all the way to nothing because they do want to see some hairs. So she had me shave it down with my guard on my clippers at 1, but she said that my hair grows too fast because I shaved it the day before, and so next time I'm gonna do it on a half guard for my clippers. So I have to actually shave my arm with my half guard and then show up to get, you know, more electrolysis. The machine and stuff, it's not very loud or anything, and it's definitely not like overwhelming or intrusive or anything feeling. The only part of it that you really even notice is the part that she holds, which is almost like a pen kind of a thing. uh, it's a little thicker than a pen, but it's that same concept. Like it's the size of um, like a diabetic pen or an EpiPen, something like that. And when she was putting, you know, this thing into each one of my little hair follicles, it's basically intended to kill the hair follicle so that it doesn't grow more hair again. It's really important for me to do this before surgery because, you know, part of this skin is going to be inside the phallus that's going to be crafted and form a urethra. So it's like really important to avoid things like fistulas and strictures and stuff like that, to not have hair growing inside your body. You know, like that can obviously create problems. So it's definitely important to get done. And thankfully, in the state that I'm in, Medicaid is, you know, required by the state laws to cover it. And since I have Medicaid, I don't have to pay for all of this electrolysis, and I don't have to pay for the surgeries because I would not be able to afford to. Just flat out, I wouldn't be able to do it. So extremely grateful, like so grateful for that. And I just got re-upped for another year. For anyone who doesn't know, Medicaid is not automatic this year. Now that the COVID lockdown stuff is all considered to be finished and done with and everything, and they're dealing with debt ceiling stuff, a lot of welfare stuff got cut and has to be done more correctly. So, yeah, but thankfully I still have Medicaid. I did lose some other services, but I did not lose my Medicaid, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Because I have appointments, like I have doctor's appointments, I have hormone replacement therapy that I have to be on for my entire life, and surgeries and electrolysis and surgical appointments and like testing and blah blah blah. Like I know I have medical stuff, so not being able to afford any of that and desperately needing it would have been like a disaster for me. So, phew, thank goodness. Um, but yeah, the electrolysis itself was just the watching the anime helped, because you know it helps distract you from what's going on your arm. And thankfully them being a nice person helps, you know, them being chit chatty and um you know, taking an interest in your interests, or however you want to say that, having a good bedside manner. Um, but it honestly wasn't bad. Like, I didn't feel like I needed the numbing cream. Now, she said when she gets to the underside of the arm that it might get worse, the pain might get worse, and that if I do need some numbing cream, to just let her know when we get to that. But she's starting on the top, partially to help me get used to it, and partially because the top is easier. And so, yeah. It's hopefully gonna be good though. I'm excited that I get to go for sure once a week, and that's a straightforward gonna happen thing. Um, I really hope that the hair follicles are nice and dead. That'd be awesome. For instructions for taking care of it when I was coming home and everything, because I have quite a drive. I have to drive over an hour to go to my appointments. Because that was what was available. A lot of people got really burnt out who accepted insurance who did electrolysis, or else people don't accept insurance who do electrolysis. Like, that was the two options I had. So I had to go really far away. But basically, it's once the hair follicles die, the hair follicles base has a little like casing around it, she said, and that casing can sometimes invert itself and look like a little zit. It can look like a little acne thing, and can sometimes look like a little baby scab. And she was like, it's really important for you for the next couple of days when you take a shower to have something that's a light abrasive on it, and to wash it with that. And then she recommended like vitamin E, to put that on it. So I have just like a sugar scrub, and that's what I'm using on it. And the other thing was, she was like, these are all really teeny tiny open wounds. So for the first day, try not to touch it with your bare hand unless you're taking a shower, because you don't want like all your oils and the germs and stuff that get on your hands to get into any of those little holes, which made sense to me. So I went home and tried not to touch my arm, obviously, and then took a shower, got the scrub on it, and came out of the shower and put some vitamin E on it. And I just got those little vitamin E, vitamin pills that are like see-through, and I just cut the end off with scissors and then squeeze the insides out onto it. And I thought it would be more liquidy than it is, but it's really sticky. It's like the consistency of honey, like sticky. So it actually, was, I thought I was going to be like just sort of wiping it on top of it, but it actually turned into like this little thick layer on top of it. But today you can barely even see it. It went from being really red to being like the exact same color as the rest of my skin by the next day. So I'll do as she says and still use the scrub and take a shower each day, for like today and tomorrow, but it already seems like it's back to normal. That like the recommendations definitely worked, so I'm gonna keep following the recommendations, and each time she does the electrolysis, do the scrub thing, the abrasive, and then put the vitamin E on top, because it worked. That worked really, really well. So cool beans. So yeah, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I don't know about electrolysis, or oh, I'm a little intimidated about electrolysis, or oh, I just want to know more about electrolysis, even if it's not for, the same reasons as me, there's you a little snippet on it, or information from my own experience. I will say that's not been the only thing on my mind, but the other things on my mind are not very happy, and the electrolysis was pretty happy. I've been working more, and I've been, earning more, so I guess that's something to be happy about, but not enough to lose Medicaid. Let's be clear here. I'm definitely still living in poverty, but at least I'm earning enough to like cover my bills and have enough that I think I'll be able to pay taxes next year without going into debt, which is awesome. To me, that's excellent. I will take it. So, avoiding debt is a good plan, especially when, you know, the economy's kind of whatever it is currently. Um, I've been very distressed by like legislation that's been getting passed, and it's been scary and stuff watching trans rights get hammered away at. But also, I found out, unfortunately, that not only is the legislation against trans people, but it specifically is trying to reinstate requirements for how to treat intersex kids. And if there is anyone who thinks it's a good idea, I really hope that they can hear the experience, the lived experience of people who were affected by it, who were born intersex like me, and how excruciatingly difficult it makes life when you do genital mutilation on a little kid, on a baby or a toddler. Like, it is horrifying for the rest of our lives. And the legislation is flat out saying stuff like, oh, 18 and under, you can't have, you know, any kind of trans care unless born intersex. And if you're trans and not born intersex, you can't have hormones, you can't have surgeries, nothing like that. But if you're born intersex, you are required to give them hormones, you are required to give them surgeries. And we don't even have a giant history in the United States of accepting that protocol. That was something that was found to be a huge, massive mistake that was done basically from the 60s until the 90s. And in 1992, they did a massive study on the people who had been affected by that and found that it was horrifying, the results. And then by 1996, they started moving toward, we need to stop. We need to stop cutting these kids. I was born in 1984, so I was sadly one of the kids that got cut. And it gives you hormone problems for the rest of your life to have a hormone-producing organ taken off of you. The majority of kids who are born intersex, the saying was it's easier to make a hole than a pole. And you have a ton of kids who weren't girls, who were turned into them because that was what was easier to normalize them and make them look less weird from an outer perspective. But internally, that wasn't necessarily correct. I was born with sex characteristics of both male and female, but I am absolutely a boy. I had more boy than girl, and none of it was functional. I was born sterile. Intersex people, you know, 98% of us or whatever are born sterile. But it doesn't mean that you should take a crapshoot when the baby is first born and have the doctor just randomly slap a gender on there and say, here's the sex of the kid, I did a little bit of alterations and now this is their sex. Because that's not how it works. And it's not just psychologically damaging, although it absolutely has been insanely psychologically damaging, but it's also physically damaging. My body and my anatomy are messed up for forever because of something I had no say in the matter of when I was a baby. Someone took a 50-50 chance that I would be the thing that they picked out, and they picked wrong. And the majority of the time, according to research, the doctor picks wrong. And that intersex kid gets raised as not what they actually are, and then has to deal with the repercussions of that psychologically and physically as an adult. And it is disastrous for us. And to go back to that kind of insistence, of harming kids that way. There are thousands of intersex babies born a year, and to pass legislation that is forcing those kids to end up like me is really, really a hard pill to swallow. Like the one single consoling thing about the situation was, well, at least kids don't have to go through what I did. And states that are passing that, if you live in one of those states, please have some compassion for that baby, because the baby did not ask to be born abnormal. And you have compassion for a baby who's born deformed in any other way. You feel sorry for it. You want to help it. But you want to torture it if it's its genitals. You demonize the baby. You act like it's a sinner because it's its genitals. And I'm telling you, it is absolute torture for that person growing up for the rest of their life. So please don't. Please. Take it from someone who has lived and experienced it and has gone through a lifetime of being tortured by it. Don't. Please don't. There's a whole conversation to be had about trans rights in general. Like, there is, absolutely. I'm not trying to say, oh, pass the bill, but leave the intersex people alone. But there is a medical issue going on with intersex kids that's being completely thrown by the wayside and not even like talked about. And the only thing that is being talked about, I feel like, is the trans rights. And it's barbaric. And it doesn't work. To mutilate these kids when they're first born because they were born different. Let them grow up some. Let them tell you, oh yeah, here, let's not make a crapshoot on what the right decision is. I know what I am. Here's the clear answer. Here we go. Now I can have surgery. Now I can be altered into a more normalized state, because now everyone's 100% certain, instead of it being a, well, hopefully this works out. Like, it's mind-boggling to me with our modern understanding of medical practice and science that anyone could think it would be a good idea to go back to the practice of automatically just trying to force intersex kids into a sex, whether that's what they are or not, just to try to normalize them. And then, oh well, the kid's tortured for the rest of their life, but at least I got to feel comfortable. Like, please don't. It's not okay to just ruin their life. I am still, to this day, I'm almost 40 years old, trying to overcome hurdles from something that I had no say in the matter of when I was too tiny to have an opinion. Couldn't even voice or advocate for myself, let alone process why I would need to do that. The adults in the situation all failed. They failed me. And I have been trying to get my life situated ever since. I have no respect for anyone who disregards, like, the needs of those kids. Please don't pass legislation that forces intersex kids to be harmed. I've been having a hard time feeling like the clock is ticking, and like, I feel like if I don't get surgeries done fast enough, the option to get surgeries can get taken away. And it's not fair that I needed surgeries in the first place. I'm transitioning because I was forced to, because the authority figures and adults in the situation when I was younger chose wrong. And I shouldn't be penalized for that. A baby doesn't get to decide if it's born abnormal or not. A baby doesn't get to decide if it's born with a certain skin color or or what parents it has. It doesn't get choices. So please take care of those kids. I just I've been having a hard time because of some other stuff as well, but it's really not helping at all. And like I have these hopes and dreams for the future after I get done with the whole transitioning with surgeries thing, and once I'm done with the surgeries, I have like these hopes and dreams, and it's like they're hanging on the edge of a cliff, and they could fall off at any minute. I could lose them somehow, and that's scary. It's scary to know my ability to just exist is determined by a whole bunch of other like people's beliefs and not about my own. It's a difficult thing for me, but I have finally started electrolysis, and I'm hoping for the best with the electrolysis, and that surgery can happen, you know, within a decent time of finishing electrolysis, and that I can actually start making progress with that. And I am so grateful that at least I've had the two, you know, surgeries that I've had, because at least I'm partway there and I'm not starting from scratch. I feel so much compassion for anyone who's starting from scratch right now. At least I had already started. I keep trying to tell myself that. At least I don't have the whole way to go. But it's still so far to go. And I just, I just, I don't know what I would do if my ability got taken away. And I don't know what to do to help the kids who are being harmed and whose ability to have a hope for their futures is being taken away. I feel like no one cares about intersex kids. I feel like no one cares about intersex adults who were intruded upon when they were kids. Like I feel like no one cares about violating someone's body that way. Like they don't care. And that's a really hard thing to feel like. Like even in the LGBT plus community, I feel like intersex people are sort of like a tack on, like they're like an afterthought. I don't feel like I don't feel like they're like a priority or anything, but at least they try to be nicer to them than the rest of the world, so you know, at least there's that. But it's like I get that intersex people are less than like 0.02% of the human population. Like intersex people are not everyone by a large margin. So I get it, but I feel like there's a zillion people who don't even know that intersex is a thing. That they don't even know that people can be born with sex characteristics of both male and female. And that this is what gets done to them. Like maybe they have a clue that people can be born with deformities and oh, they have characteristics of both male and female. But they have no idea what happens to them when they, their knowledge ends there, even if they have that knowledge. And even if they do hear that they get cut, they think of it as like a circumcision. They don't think of it as having like actual sex organs removed or hormone producing body parts removed. They don't think about it as a lifelong repercussion for that person and their body, their ability to function. They don't think about it at all. It's easy to be removed from it because we are so rare. Intersex people are not very common. But that doesn't change that we're people and we should be allowed to exist. I feel like I should be allowed to exist.